Hello, welcome to the Wildline Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. Today is going to be a special episode. It is the fall movie preview. What we're going to do is walk through the bigger films that are getting released over the next 3 months, basically the weekend of August 31st through essentially Thanksgiving or the weekend of November 21st. We will sort of briefly mention what the film's about, walk through what the current projection is for its box office opening. We're going to use Hollywood Stock Exchange to sort of give us those numbers. I think that's a good way to get consensus here on what the box office nerds are thinking about each one of these films. So we'll mention what we think the projection is. I will give my viewpoint of that projection, when I think it's high or low, and what I think the film's actually going to do, and maybe briefly talk about how each one of these movies is going to perform overall domestically for their box office run. So let's dive right into the first weekend of August 31st. One other note is that I'm not going to focus on any film that I think is going to make less than $5 million on its opening weekend. So we're going to sort of stick to the mid-tier and higher films here. So on August 31st, the first film we have up here is Searching. This is a psychological thriller. It's like a social media thriller. It's all based on like Facebook and social media and smartphones, kind of like Unfriended, maybe like dark web. It's like a whole social media genre here of thriller and horror films coming out. John Cho is the lead here, who I love. He's a fantastic actor. He was so good in Columbus last year. If you have not seen Columbus, do check it out. With this one, you know, usually these social media thriller horror films don't do all that well. They're usually shot for like $1 million. I think that's what Dark Web was shot for. So this one's kind of already got that writing against it. But if you checked out the trailer, there was some good buzz from this movie at Sundance. The trailer was just phenomenal. One of the better trailers I've seen this year, hands down. So it has, and you got John Cho as the lead. So it's got a lot of things going for it. The other thing stacked against it, unfortunately, is the release date. August 31st, this weekend coming up, is going to be probably super quiet. It's usually one of the worst weekends to open a film throughout the entire year. And that's because August is the big vacation month. Also, college students are now back in school for the most part. And then everybody else, grade school, high schoolers, are going back around these weekends and these weeks. So it's a really tough weekend. It's usually one of the most quiet weekends at the box office throughout the entire year. So it's going to be, there's a lot stacked against it. The genre, the timing, but I think the lead and I think the trailer were so good, and it looks like it's very high quality, that I think it's going to do a little bit better than what people think. So the current projection now is about $6 to $7 million opening weekend. That feels about right to me, but I do sense that if Searching can really connect with the under 25 audience, and I think that's the key for this film, if it can do that, I see it pushing the 9 to 10 range, and I see a multiplier here of about 3-ish. So I think a real good success for a film like this is if it opens at 10 and closes out at about 30. That's my guess of how it's going to do. And the reason I say that is the quality just looks so much higher than these typical unfriended dark web movies. If it was one of those sort of typical kind of, I'm going to say throwaway social media thriller horror movies, I would say it opens at like 5 or 4 because the weekend is so tough with everybody going back to school. But I'm going to say 9 to 10 open, close out probably around the 30 range. The other movie opening on the 31st is a movie called Kin. Now, Kin is a very strange film. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense what it's all about. It is a Lionsgate film that was acquired and shot back in the end of 2016. It was filmed in Toronto. Summit put it out. It's going to be distributed by Lionsgate. It has an interesting cast. It's got Zoe Kravitz, Carrie Coon, Dennis Quaid, James Franco, music by Mogwai. So it's got all of these elements that seem like it could be cool, and it might be a really amazing film. Unfortunately, the marketing has been basically non-existent for this film. I didn't know it was coming out until I looked at the release schedules earlier this week. So there's almost zero buzz, maybe even negative buzz and hype for this movie. And you kind of have to wonder why Lionsgate is dumping it on this weekend. Not a lot of good signs here. On paper, it looks kind of interesting, but when you kind of look at the context of the marketing and what's been done with the film, it doesn't look good here. Consensus is basically saying, just like Searching, $6 to $7 million opening. I think that's probably a little high. I've heard basically nothing about this film, like absolutely nothing, and so I feel like they've dumped this, and they probably should have just gone straight to VOD. And maybe there's a contractual obligation to put it in theaters, would be my guess. I just don't see it. I don't see it doing more than 4 to 5. And I think it probably closes out. Depending on quality, if it's got good quality, it could have a nice little multiplier, get up to the $20 million range opening. But I'm going to say it's going to open at like $4.5 million. Really a huge bust here. I'm not sure what the production budget was, but it was acquired by Lionsgate for $30 million, the rights at least. I don't know what production was on this. It looks, it's sci-fi, so it looks like it's going to be pretty high. I don't think it's going to do anything. Hopefully it's a good film though. I kind of hold out hope that it actually has some high quality, but I think box office wise it's going to be non-existent. Also coming out on August 31st is The Little Stranger. Now this film is also a little bit of a mystery to me and has been for a while. I saw the trailer about 2-3 weeks ago. It's from Focus Features. It's based on a book by Sarah Waters. You got Donald Gleason, Ruth Wilson, Will Porter, Charlotte Rampling. So you have a good, strong cast. The plot seems a little kind of dry. It's kind of listed as gothic drama horror film, which I think is very apt and very pinpointed to the trailer perfectly. It's, it takes place in the summer of 1947. So it's got an older feel to it, out in the country in the UK. There's some weird stuff going on with, I think, like maybe ghosts or like a murder, maybe a little slightly noir-y. None of this matters though, because nobody's going to see this movie. Focus Features is putting it out here in the United States. They're the distributor. There's like 4 different production companies: Film 4, Element Pictures, Dark Trick Films, and Pot Boiler Productions. Lenny Abramson is the director. What is this thing going to do? I don't really know him very much. Oh, he did The Room, and he also did Frank. Interesting. I sadly have not seen The Room yet. I really need to see that. One of the better films of that year, with Brie Larson in the lead there. Little Stranger, right now it's projected to do about $6 million to open. I don't know. That weekend's, it's a really tough weekend. The film doesn't really have any bite to it in terms of hype whatsoever. I'm going to say probably more like $4 million opening, closes out at, I think, about a decent, like maybe $12 million. With these 3 movies coming out August 31st, you can obviously tell it's a dumping ground for film. It's just going to be so quiet, nothing big opens. Everybody's kind of waiting for that first weekend, September, where it does really feel like fall. And that's, we'll talk about The Nun here, but that first weekend in fall now, kind of, I guess that's post-Labor Day, it's now a horror weekend, ever since it opened last year at like, 1/23 or something like that. So, and now it has scheduled the same weekend next year. You could say, one film doesn't make a sort of a ritual or whatever, but I think that it has. And then people choosing The Nun's opening weekend definitely chose that weekend for a reason. It's the first really kickoff weekend. This weekend before August 31st it's a ghost town, really. So I'm thinking 9 to 10 for Searching. I think it over indexes and does pretty well. King, I think 4, 4.5. Stranger, I think 4, maybe even 3 for its opening weekend. So super quiet weekend overall. But then things start to really kick off the next weekend when The Nun opens. So let's dive right into The Nun right now. The Nun is part of the Conjuring universe, cinematic universe. It's the 5th installment of that series. Can I name them all? Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2, Annabelle 1, Annabelle 2, Annabelle Creation, I think is what its actual title was. So Annabelle Creation did really well last year, very surprisingly well. This whole sort of, I don't want to call it accidental cinematic universe, but I do not think that Warner Brothers and everybody involved with the Conjuring series thought that it was going to spawn this whole cinematic universe like it has. And the nun is just a character. It's a really kind of evil nun, or like possessed nun. That was part of, I believe she was in the original Conjuring. I can't remember off the top of my head. Like, she pops up once or twice. She plays a kind of background role in those movies. We don't really know her backstory, and so this whole movie is a spin-off of the Conjuring, I guess 2. It's a spin-off of Conjuring 2 more than anything. So what is this all about, and how's this going to do? James Wan, who directed the original Conjuring, I think maybe wrote it too, is producing and wrote this story. I think he gets at least a writing credit here. So it's part of this well-established brand within horror. So we think it's going to open pretty well. The current projection has it at 26-ish opening, which is pretty high for a September 7th opening here, that first weekend in September. Usually it's super dead like late August. But there's enough meat on the bones with this movie that I think it's going to do pretty well. It's a period piece, takes place in the 1950s in Romania. A Catholic priest and a novice are sent by the Vatican to investigate the mysterious suicide of a nun at this monastery. Okay, cool. That's the setup, whatever. 26 high-low. Do we think that that's in the right range? To me, that's a really good conservative estimate for this. I am seeing this more easily going into the 30s. I'm going to guess 45 as the opening, with maybe a 120-ish closeout domestically. There's too much goodwill built up by the Conjuring series and the Annabelle movies. Even though people kind of shit on the Annabelle movies, I thought they were both pretty good. I really like the first Annabelle. It really fades at the end of the movie, but the first hour of that movie is awesome. James Wan knows what he's doing. And so I think there's so much goodwill here. I think it's been really quiet. There hasn't been a big movie since like Meg, probably, when we get to this weekend. So I do think it's going to do quite well and capture a really sort of restless audience that is out there. Horror is massive these days. It's also the It weekend. Remember last year, it opened at like 120-ish, I think. This weekend broke every single horror record imaginable. Biggest horror film of all time. So this weekend is now cemented as a horror weekend. I think for the foreseeable future, next year, it too opens up on this weekend, which should do at least $100 million opening weekend. So I think it's just everything's sort of falling in line for the nun to do quite well. So I think it's going to really overperform expectations and open at about 45. Also coming out that weekend is Peppermints. I don't know much about Peppermint because I have to look it up really quick. I think I saw the trailer for this. Oh, yeah. I've definitely seen the trailer for this. This is kind of a revenge film starring Jennifer Garner. Her husband and daughter are killed in a drive-by shooting by members of a drug cartel. The killers walk free due to corrupt officials, and it's sure she has to get her revenge on these killers who killed her family. It's from STX. It feels like it's getting dumped here this weekend. Jennifer Garner being involved is a big deal for it. It's from the director of Taken, Pierre Morel. So he has a little bit of that action pedigree going on, but he hasn't had a hit in the last few years. STX being involved kind of makes me skeptical about it. They're not known for their quality. They're a newer studio who kind of throws money around at smaller projects like this. I don't see any buzz for this. I don't see any way this is going to do all that well. Right now it's projected to open at about 11, 10, 12. That seems kind of high to me. I don't really see any audience for this. So I think kind of high single digits. I'm going to guess $7 million for Peppermint. Just because I've seen the trailer. It's not very good. The story seems kind of stupid to me. STX is not good at marketing. Jennifer Garner's not really a huge movie star anymore. She was an A-lister probably like 10, 15 years ago, but she's not anymore. So I just don't see this doing well. I just don't think there's any buzz. So I'm gonna guess below projections. I'm gonna say it's gonna open about $7 million for the weekend. All right, on to the next weekend. This will be September. That was September 7th. This will be September 14th, 2018. We have 3 movies we think are going to open over $5 million. The biggest one is probably going to be The Predator. This is directed by Shane Davis. Is this a reboot? I can't tell if it's a reboot or not. Boyd Holbrook. I don't know the rest of these people. Keegan-Michael Key is in it. Olivia Munn, Sterling K. Brown, Thomas Jane's in it. How about that? I don't know what this is going to do. I have no clue, to be honest with you. It's slated at a 26 opening. $26 million for its opening weekend is the current nerd projection on Hollywood Stock Exchange. The trailers looked okay. Shane Black has been really hot recently. I mean, Nice Guys didn't do that well in the theater, but it's almost become already like a cult hit. This one's getting distributed by 20th Century Fox. So it's a big studio, big director, some big stars involved. The question is there an appetite for a new Predator movie? I can't even remember the last Predator movie. Was it Alien versus Predator? It can't be. I hope not. That movie was awful. Predator is one of those sort of, beloved films from the 80s. The sequel, I think, was also in the 80s. Actually, it might have been early 90s with Gary Busey. That movie is nuts. Predator 2. It's fucking really fun movie. With this one, 26, I don't know. I mean, does that seem right? That seems a little low to me for a movie with this kind of caliber in it, or involved, I should say. I feel like it's probably more like a $31 million opening. Now, the weekend before, I'm guessing 45 for The Nun. Are we going to have two kind of bigger openings in these 2 weekends, early weekends in September? Is it possible? 26 just seems so low to me. But the quality of the film doesn't look over the top good. It looks okay. Having Shane Black involved is a really good sign. Obviously, he did like Lethal Weapon and a lot of the movies. So he knows how to do action. I think I'm gonna go with 31. Depending on the quality, it could hit $100 million total domestically. I feel like the mid-20s is too low for this. I think there's too much built-up nostalgia. I think there's too much quality going into this movie. It's 20th Century Fox, so they're going to push this thing out hardcore on the marketing. So I'm thinking probably about low 30s. I'm going to guess 31 for this one. A Simple Favor. I don't know anything about this movie. Thriller murder mystery based on a book by Darcy Bell. I don't think I've even seen the trailer on this one. This one's opening up on a weekend that, it's going to be tough going up against Predator. Like, it's counter programming. Who's in this thing? Anna Kendrick, Blake Lively, Henry Golding, Andrew Rannells, Paul Feig. Okay. This is why, I was like, why is this movie opening? Like, who's involved? Why is this going to be decently sized? It's Paul Feig and the stars here with Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively. A Simple Favor centers on 3 small-town characters: a mom blogger, who's Anna Kendrick, her best friend, Blake Lively, who disappears suddenly, and the latter's husband, Henry Golding. The story includes betrayals, reversals, a dead body, and the revolving question of who is duping whom. Okay, murder, mystery, thriller, whatever. Paul Feig has been doing okay recently. Obviously, Spy and Ghostbusters were his big recent movies. Before that, The Heat, Bridesmaids were his really sort of claims to fame. Does a lot of writing. I have not seen anything about this movie. It's projected to open at 13-ish. Its opening weekend. With that director and those stars, it could kind of break out a bit. I feel like 13's right around what I would guess that it would open without knowing a lot about it. But there is a chance that it does okay. I'm going to guess probably 14 to 15 on this one. I just feel like with Paul Feig involved and those stars, there's kind of a built-in female audience. And if you're looking over the last couple of weeks at the box office here, there hasn't been a really big female-focused film that has come out. The Predator and Nun are going to do well. I think A Simple Favor might soak up that female demographic a little bit. So I'm going to say 14 to 15 for that one. The last movie opening on September 14th that we think is going to do at least over $5 million, this one's barely going to do it, is White Boy Rick. I don't know anything about this. It is coming out from Studio 8. Distributed by Columbia Pictures. It's going to premiere at the Toronto Film Festival here in September and then immediately get released. The premise is in 1980s Detroit, Ricky Wurzel Jr. was a street hustler, FBI informant, and drug kingpin, all before he turned 16. Matthew McConaughey's in it, Bruce Dern, Richie Merritt, I think is the star, I guess. The director, what else did this guy do? Really nothing to speak of. So I guess I don't know what the plan is here. They're pushing this out on the Toronto Film Festival, which is in September, and then automatically or immediately releasing it wide. Currently projected to make about $7 million opening weekend. That seems, unless it's like unbelievably amazing, that's not going to happen. I'm going to say like $4 million tops, maybe even lower. You know what? I'm going to say $3 million, just because it's like there's not enough time to build up that hype. I've heard nothing about this movie at all. Now maybe it's really good and it opens a little bit better. Even if it's fantastic, I don't see it opening over 5.7. I think it's going to open around 3. With The Nun doing really good on its second weekend for the 14th, and I think The Predator doing quite well on its opening weekend. All right, let's keep this train running. Let's do the next weekend, September 21st, 2018. We have 3 movies that we think we're going to do over 5 million its opening weekend. The first one is The House with a Clock in Its Walls. This one is coming from Universal Pictures, directed by Eli Roth. I did not know he directed this. Jack Black, Cate Blanchett, and that's sort of the biggest stars. I don't know. I saw the trailer to this one, wasn't really sure what was going on. It's like a fantasy film. There's a novel that this is based on that I don't know anything about. I don't have kids. I'm not young, so I don't really know a ton about the background on this movie. It's an interesting weekend to open on later in September. You would assume that students are into the groove of the new school year. People have settled down back into work after they've been on vacation in August. So it probably has a decent chance of doing okay. It's not going to be smothered by this sort of desert at the box office like it would this weekend or next weekend. But I have not seen a ton of hype surrounding this in terms of social media buzz or anything like that. Now, I could be missing it because I'm not in those age brackets where this is going to do well. This is definitely an under 25 type movie. Right now, it's projected to do about $17 million opening weekend, maybe close out at like 45-ish or 50-ish. That seems about right. Something feels off about this movie, and I can't tell you what it is. Obviously Jack Black is, he's in Goosebumps. He's got this whole other career, second half of his career that he's been doing recently, from his very bizarre first half of his career, like Tenacious D and stuff like that. I feel like 17 is really conservative for a movie like this. It should be opening in the mid-20s, low 20s. But because I just have not seen a lot of trailers and marketing for it, it does kind of feel like Universal is giving this the dump in September. I'm going to say it opens up at like 19. No, let's say 18. That's my sort of gut right now on it. So right in line with what Hollywood Stock Exchange is saying. It doesn't seem like it's going to pop off at all. I don't see like a mid-20s opening. I certainly don't see anything higher than that. But I could be wrong because it's based on a book. There might be that built-in book audience that shows up. I'm assuming younger folks. But it does not have the pop that a movie would need to open up in the 30s or something like that. So I'm going to kind of stick with the crowd in this one and say about 18. Also an opening that weekend of September 21st is Michael Moore's new movie, Fahrenheit 11/9. This is sort of the spiritual sequel to Fahrenheit 9/11, which I think came out, 2004, right before that election? Yeah. So, Michael Moore. He's like the polemic, sort of not even really leftist. He's more like a Democrat, liberal type, who really wants to go after Donald Trump, and this is his documentary to go after Donald Trump. The poster says tyrant, liar, racist, a hole in one. Has Donald Trump swinging a golf club with a nuclear cloud going off over the White House. So he is certainly not pulling any punches in terms of his messaging here. It's going to premiere at the Toronto Film Festival here in the next month, and then open up right away on the 21st here. So what is this going to do? Current consensus has this at about $9 million opening. That seems pretty low. And if you were asking me this on Monday, I would say, oh yeah, maybe like 10 or something like that. But ever since the atom bomb went off yesterday afternoon, when Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen Manafort was found guilty of 8 charges of fraud and various corruption. Cohen pleaded guilty to 8 charges, including one that implemented the president directly in a federal crime. This thing is only going to get worse for the Trump administration. We're now in sort of that Watergate zone where anything could happen right now. So I feel like this movie has a lot more weight behind it because of the legal proceedings that have started really solidified the criticisms of the Trump administration. Before, it was sort of like, oh, he like is an asshole, he's a jerk, he's so unpresidential. A lot of like more opinion-based stuff that was going on. But now that you have these guilty pleas, and there's a lot of them too, but I think his personal lawyer implementing it in that crime changes the whole ballgame here. So I think Fahrenheit's going to do a lot better than this. I see it opening around 15 to 20, just because of the political climate right now. Now the original, I have to look up what the original did because I don't remember the top of my head, but it was very successful. I remember had a budget of $6 million, did 222 worldwide for Fahrenheit 9/11. I remember going to see that opening weekend. It was packed, sold out house. I think I was living in Minnesota at the time. It really popped off, and it was the timing on that one with the Iraq War and the election coming up. This one seems even maybe a little bit more of the moment and the time with Trump's administration basically falling apart before our eyes. So I think it's going to do quite well. I think that 8-9 range is too low. I see it doing about 15 to 20. If I had to like guess, I'd probably say about $17 million on its opening weekend. And depending on how good it is, that could be $40 million total take domestically, could be $60 million total take domestically. It really depends on quality. The final movie opening up on September 21st is Assassination Nation, directed by Sam Levinson, also written by him. I don't know much about this. Oh, it's being distributed by Neon. So Neon is a newer group distributor started by, I believe, one of the former founders of the Alamo Drafthouse down in Texas. Really edgy films. This one premiered at Sundance last year. Haven't heard much about it. 77% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. Only 13 reviews. 6.1 out of 10 as the actual sort of ratings from critics. Metacritic has it at 54. So kind of mixed reviews on this one. Neon puts out really fascinating kind of neon-ish movies. Like, they're very colorful, very over the top. Gemini was a good one. Ingrid Goes West, which is another one they put out. So they are selecting really, I would say, unique films with a unique visual style, and films that pop, that really grab you in, at least visually. And so I'm really excited about this studio. I'm excited about what they're going to do. I kind of see them going head to head with A24 over the next few years for like one of the better independent film distributors here in the United States. What's this one going to do? Currently projected at $5 million opening. I don't think that's going to happen. I think more 2 to 3-ish overall, even if it gets a super wide release, which I'm not even sure is going to happen now. The quality doesn't look like it's there. Neon's too small to really do big numbers at this point. So I'm thinking 2 to 3, probably close out around 10, 12 total domestically for Assassination Nation from Neon. All right, September 28th, we have 3 films coming out that we think are going to do okay. Smallfoot is a 3D animation film from Warner Brothers Animation Group. It's about a Yeti who tries to figure out if human beings actually exist, a kind of sort of twist on the whole myth of the Yeti and Bigfoot. The main voice is going to be Channing Tatum, with some support from Common, LeBron James, Danny DeVito. This one's scheduled or sort of projected to do about $23 million opening weekend. That seems pretty high to me for something like this. It is one of the few children's films coming out in September, so it has that going for it. But Warner Brothers, their animation group, they did Storks. It wasn't really good. It's not like Pixar or anything like that. So I don't think there's going to be a huge audience for this. I don't think it's going to make the 20s. I think it's going to make like the high teens. I'm going to project about $18 million for the opening on this with a really good multiplier. I would see it probably in the 50 to 60 range. It'll sort of cap out domestically for its box office run. I might be totally wrong because I don't have kids and I'm kind of out of touch with this sort of type of genre film. I could be wrong, but I don't see anything really popping off about this. So I'm thinking about $18 million for Smallfoot. Also that weekend is Night School, starring Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish. Rob Riggle, Taron Killam is also involved. from Universal Pictures. This is a group of troublemakers who are forced to attend night school in hopes that they'll pass the GED exam to finish high school. This almost seems like a throwback to like an 80s movie, like Summer School. Who knows? I mean, the director is Malcolm D. Lee. I got to look him up really quick and see what he's done before. Oh, he did Girls Trip, Barbershop, Next Cut, Best Man's Holiday, Scary Movie 5, ouch, Soul Man. So he's got some pedigree as a filmmaker. I think that I don't know. It's projected to do right now about $20 million opening. There are a lot of tough calls this fall because fall is just so weird. September especially is hard to project what's going to happen. Like until it last year, like nothing opened big in September, like absolutely nothing. It was as dead as a February or January was 10 years ago. But after it, it's a really hard read. I think 19 seems about right. It doesn't seem like it's going to break out all that much. But Kevin Hart is a big draw for a lot of people. Tiffany Haddish is fantastic. I think it's going to do okay. I see more like a 23-ish opening for this, maybe even like a 25, depending on the quality. You're looking at like a 60 to 70 to 80-ish total take for Night School. But I do think it's going to over-index the current projection for it. I see it in the low to mid 20s as an opening, just because of Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish in the leads. I think both of those actors are great pulls in terms of audience. So the final film that is opening up on September 28th is going to be Hellfest. This is a slasher film from CBS Films and Lionsgate. I saw the trailer. It looks horrifically bad and stupid. The film takes place in a horror theme park during Halloween Horror Nights, and a costume killer begins slaying unsuspecting parkgoers who are unclear whether it's all part of the park experience or not. Filmed in Atlanta. I think that's because one of the executive producers is Gail Ann Hurd, who does all the Walking Dead stuff. She's kind of one of the leads over there. They film all their stuff down in Atlanta. This one seems like a quick cash grab that's not going to work out all that well. Currently projected to do about $11-ish million. I think that's doable. It's just the trailer was so bad for this, and it just looks so hacky, pun intended, and not very good. You got Smallfoot open, you got Night School. We had a horror movie earlier this month with The Nun. I feel like 10's a little too high. I'm feeling more like an $8 million opening for this with a kind of tough multiplier. Maybe it edges it out to like $20 million total domestically. That's kind of where I see that film going. I do think Night School is going to win that weekend of the 28th of September. All right, let's dive into October 2018 now, and we have a big one to start with. We have Venom is opening that first weekend of October 5th, 2018. This one is kind of all over the place. No one has any idea what's going on. It's projected on Hollywood Stock Exchange to do about $50 million its opening weekend. A little bit of background here. This is a Sony Pictures release. It's not MCU. But it's supposed to be Sony Pictures' first sort of like Sony Cinematic Universe, Marvel Universe or something. I guess Spider-Man Homecoming is a part of that too. This stuff is confusing, and I follow the film industry. I have no idea who's involved, which where are not. Amy Pascal is one of the producers. She was big at Sony Pictures until she got fired after the hack. Obviously, Venom is, an offshoot of the Spider-Man mythology. This one's starting Tom Hardy, Michelle Williams, Riz Ahmed, who's been fantastic recently. So you have big names, you get a big studio backing, you get a huge character involved. So $50 million sounds about right. I see a lot of red flags here popping up. One, the trailers were terrible and they're already memes. In a bad way. And I don't know if that's MCU Marvel people sort of wanting to shit all over Sony and trying to do their own thing with the Marvel characters. I'm not really sure, but the quality of the trailers was not good. It was so dark. Like the trailers looked like a David Fincher like basement scene. It was like pitch black, these trailers. You can't tell anything that's going on. I love Tom Hardy. He doesn't really seem like this character, to be honest with you. I don't know Venom and its sort of background. I haven't read the comics or anything like that. So, but like just from an outsider's viewpoint, watching that trailer, it felt awkward. He felt awkward in that character. The special effects didn't seem all that great. So I'm a little bit concerned about the quality here. A second red flag is this confusion of the MCU world, the Disney MCU, the real MCU versus like the Sony Marvel universe. What is going on, and who thought that this would be a good idea to have these parallel sort of things happening? It's just it's bonkers to me, and it's created animosity between groups of fans. It's just gotten super weird. Everything about this movie feels off. So I don't think now. Okay, if we take comic book movies in general, they're all opening well over $50 million. Ant-Man and the Wasp is the basement now for an MCU. It opened up at like 76. So is it going to get to that range in the real sort of Disney MCU world? No, it's not. I don't think it's going to get anywhere close to that. Box Office Pro is saying the thing's going to open at $80 million. I don't think so. It just does not have that feeling to me it's going to do all that well. Is it going to open at 50? I think there's a good chance that it doesn't. And maybe I'm totally misreading the vibe on this film. Because Spider-Man Homecoming, which was Sony, that did over $100 million opening weekend. So Venom, kind of an offshoot of that. There's just something doesn't add up about any of this in the film and how it was made, how it's produced, how it's marketed. And that sort of, I got a gut feeling it's not going to do well. I think it's going to open pretty poorly at like 45. Depending on the quality, which I don't think is probably going to be great, easily does, I want to say 120-ish total domestic. I just don't think it's going to explode like some people online are thinking. Box Office Pro saying 80, that just seems totally outlandish to me. If it was MCU and this was Venom and it had the MCU polish to it, I would say 80 to 100 easy, just because they can open anything over $75 million these days. But because it's from Sony, because everything sort of seems all over the place and scattered, I just don't think it's going to do it. I don't think it's going to connect really well with audiences at all, unless the quality is absolutely outstanding, which it doesn't look like it is. Okay, so I'm thinking Venom's going to underperform at about $45 million for the weekend. The second movie opening up against Venom is going to be A Star Is Born. This is a musical romantic drama. Bradley Cooper's directorial debut, obviously the famous actor. Of course, he's starring in it. Eric Roth is also starring in it. Will Fetters. Actually, those are the writers. Bradley Cooper is a writer. Eric Roth is a writer. Will Fetters is a writer. It's starring Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga, Andrew Dice Clay, Dave Chappelle, Sam Elliott. So this one could be... what is this going to do? This isn't going to do anything. It's Bradley Cooper directing. That's the only reason why he got those people involved. It's from Warner Brothers. It's super long. It's over 2 hours long. Maybe the music's so good that people are going to like... dive into it. I have no idea. I gotta look at the plot on this one. I'm not gonna, I'm not even gonna go into it. I don't have time for this. It's supposed to open at 24-ish, 23-ish. I don't see how that happens. Like, unless there's a huge sort of maybe rom-com demographic that shows up for this, I don't feel like this is gonna do all that much. They just, let's see. Premiered, it's going to premiere at the Venice Film Festival August 31st. It'll also screen at Toronto in September, and then they're pushing it out right away in October. I don't know. It's also, one of the production companies is Live Nation, the concert group. This just feels weird. It feels like a vanity project to me. I don't know. They're thinking 24 for this. That seems way too high. I feel like it opens up at like 17 and somehow gets to like $50 million total. Again, could be totally wrong. I'm just sort of reading these films as they come up. It's got a big distributor. Warner Brothers is putting it out. It's got all these huge stars in it. But I just don't think that's what gets people into the theater these days. You have to do something really special from a product perspective, and this doesn't look that special to me. It looks like a vanity project. So I think it opens up at 17 and doesn't do all that well. On to September 12th now. We have 3 big movies opening, or at least 2 big movies and a smaller one. First Man is opening up, starring Ryan Gosling. This is one of those movies where it hasn't premiered yet. It's going to premiere at Venice in about a week. The quality could be fantastic. This is from the director of La La Land, his follow-up movie here. I feel like it could be huge. It's over 2 hours long, $70 million budget. Universal Pictures putting it out, so it's not like a small indie film or anything like that. It's projected right now to do about 21. That seems small to me. This feels like a bigger movie than that, because of the director, because of Ryan Gosling, because of the subject matter. It's essentially about Neil Armstrong walking on the moon for the first time. The trailer was really artistic and well done. Got a little goosebump action going on with it. It's gonna be a big IMAX movie. I get the feeling that this is gonna break out. That's what I'm feeling. I'm thinking more like a $35 million opening for this. So I'm thinking way over what the projection is currently at like 21, low 20s. I'm thinking 35, maybe even higher than 40, 45 or something like that. But I'm going to stick with 35 for right now. I think it's kind of a great multiplier. I think this screams quality to me, and awards winner, or at least a lot of awards nominations. I think it breezes past 100 million, probably does like 130, 140, 150 domestically. I think this is going to be a big winner of the fall. First Man with Ryan Gosling, the story of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. I do feel like it has a great chance to stick around for most of the fall season through the holiday award season as well. So First Man, I'm guessing 35 for that one. Goosebumps, Haunted Halloween. Jack Black is not back for this one. He's going to be in that other Clocks movies that I talked about, The House with the Clock on the Wall and its walls. I think it's really going to hurt because Jack Black felt like the center of that last film. There's something about him that really goes along with the Goosebumps brand in that film. This one's going to do, I don't think it's going to do as well. It's from Sony Pictures. Ari Sandel is the director. Did he do the first one? He did not do the first one. He did The Duff. He did When We First Met. And that's basically it. So he's kind of a newer director, unproven. I'm not even sure what the plot. Let's look at the plot of this one. In a small town of Wardenclyffe on Halloween night, two boys named Sonny and Sam find a manuscript in an abandoned house that was previously owned by R.L. Stine called Haunted Halloween. When they open it, they unbeknowingly release Slappy, who plans to cause a Halloween apocalypse with the help of... I don't care anymore. It's already super meta. Are kids that meta? Are kids that postmodern where you need to write a book about people finding a book and the book comes to life? I'm over it. Like the 90s happened. Postmodernists happened. Fine, let's move on. So I don't know. It looks really stupid. I've not seen the trailer. Projected to open at about 14. That's so low for a movie like this. I can't necessarily disagree with that either, though. I think the projection seems outrageously low to me. It feels more like a 15, I'm saying like $16 million opening for Goosebumps 2. Despite the fact that Jack Black's not back, unproven director, the plot seems really stupid. But it's Goosebumps. Goosebumps has a built-in audience. That's my generation of people who grew up reading those books. They all have kids now, or a lot of them do. So I think it's still gonna sort of tap into that instant audience that it already has. So I'm going to guess a little bit higher than projections, about 16. I'm not sure what official tracking is going to say for that one. I think official tracking is going to say like 20s, 25-ish. But I don't think it's going to go that high. I'm thinking mid-teens, 16 for Goosebumps 2. Probably closes out with a good multiplier, though, at least a 3x multiplier. So you're talking maybe like $50 million total for Goosebumps 2. The last film on October 12th is going to be Bad Times at El Royale. This is from 20th Century Fox, directed by Drew Goddard, Jeff Bridges, Cynthia Ivero, Dakota Johnson, John Hamm. I don't know much about this one. Crime mystery thriller. I don't know. I don't know anything. I guess it's kind of like a little bit noir film. I've not seen the trailer to this one. Not a lot of buzz. Chris Hemsworth and Nick Offerman are also in it. Really cool cast. This seems kind of interesting. I wish I knew a lot more about the premise, but I don't. Cast in a 1960s set film to play two among the several characters who collide at the El Royale in California's Lake Tahoe. Okay, so definitely noirish, period piece. Could be pretty cool. I guess it really comes down to the director, Drew Goddard, who also did... What else did he do? Did a lot of writing for Buffy and Angel and Lost. Director wise, he did World War. Oh, he didn't direct. He wrote World War Z, at least the script. He wrote The Martian, and also executive produced that. He wrote 10 Cloverfield Paradox. This is his first direction since Cabin in the Woods. Okay, this is a Cabin in the Woods guy. So he's a Josh Whedon universe person. I did not know him very well, clearly. So this one, I'm getting sort of a little kind of, not goosebumps, but sort of, my gut is saying this could be a little bit of a breakout here. I'm looking at the cast. I wish I'd seen the trailer. I'm looking at the cast, looking at the production company, looking at the people who wrote it and are directing it. I'm feeling like this could do okay. It seems very nerdy, and it seems like it's made for that nerd audience. It's projected to open at 13. That seems pretty high to me. Based on everything that I saw, 13 seems kind of high for a movie like this on paper. But I think that that's kind of in the realm. Here's the problem. The audience that's going to go see the Bad Times at El Royale, they're going to see First Man instead. You know, that's going to be the nerdy, arty flick that people go see over Bad Times at El Royale. So I think it's going to get buried, unfortunately, by an overperformance of The First Man that weekend, which I'm projecting to do about 35. So Bad Times, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to do all that well, despite my excitement about it. I'm going to say probably about $9 million opening weekend. Now, it does have the potential to become like one of those weird cult classics instantaneously, and maybe its second and third weekends really pick up. But I feel like it's one of those movies that's going to disappear from theaters, and then on VOD and streaming, it's going to take off as like a little cult hit, depending on the quality. But that closes out the weekend there of October 12th. All right, on to a big film here that's opening up. This is going to be the weekend of October 19th. The Halloween reboot opens. And this is coming from Universal Pictures. Blumhouse is involved. Miramax is involved. Rough House Pictures is involved. Director is David Gordon Green, the sort of art house indie guy who's sort of crossed over a few times into sort of mainstream movies. John Carpenter's back to do the music. That's pretty cool. Written by Danny McBride and David Gordon Green. Starring Jamie Lee Curtis, Judy Greer, who's wonderful. Will Patton, Nick Castle. The film picks up 40 years after the events of the 1978 original, where Larry Strode comes face to face with Mike Myers for one final confrontation. So this one's kind of been all over the place in terms of expectations. I had heard that the screen testing on this, on one of the first cuts of it, did not go very well. So they had to go back and do some pretty significant reshoots on this film. David Gordon Green, to me, is somebody who is incredibly uneven. He has some really fantastic movies under his belt. Recently, what did he do? Our Brand is Crisis he directed. Yikes. Manglehorn, Joe, Prince Avalanche. His last big breakout movie was a decade ago as a director. I'm looking at stuff. Your Highness, The Sitter. Nobody saw these movies. So, like Prince Avalanche is supposed to be pretty good, but it's an art flick. And before that, he broke out with like George Washington, All the Real Girls. Undertow was pretty good, but Pineapple Express is probably his biggest sort of mainstream movie. He also did a lot of TV work, Eastbound and Down with Danny McBride, of course. He also did Vice Principals, Red Oaks. So he's had a lot more success recently with TV, it looks like. So this is kind of his chance to get back in the mainstream film world. I don't know. So it's projected to do, you're going to hear me a lot of I don't knows this on these episodes. It's only projected to open at 13. That seems really obscenely low. That would have it close out at about, if it's lucky, 50. This seems way too low. It's opening up a couple weeks before Halloween. There's nothing really coming out before this to take that horror audience besides Hellfest, and then before that, The Nun, but that opens up in like a week. So it does kind of have the Halloween audience on lockdown. 13 seems way too low. That almost seems like it's got to be an error. I got to look that up and make sure that that's right. That does not seem even remotely possible that the box office nerds of no, that's right. It's in that. That's what they say. Wow. Baseline to this seems 25 is minimum opening for this. If it breaks out, you're looking at 40, maybe even $50 million. I'm going to say it opens up probably like 30. Now, there's obviously some quality issues going on here. Do people want to show up and see Jamie Lee Curtis again in a new Halloween movie? There's been so many Halloween movies over the years. Is David Gordon Green going to be able to deliver on a mainstream movie? He hasn't in the past, unfortunately, been able to do that sometimes. I just feel like it's got the brand, it's got the release date, it's got the studio backing from Universal. Blumhouse was involved, who always puts out interesting and at least lower budget work. The budget on this was only $10 million. I think this is going to ride the recent horror wave and do pretty well, mostly because of the brand and the timing of the release. Quality wise, who knows? I think it opens up at 30, and if it's not very good, doesn't look very good, it'll probably close out at like 70, 80. I think even if it opens at 30, I don't think it's going to hit $100 million. That's my guess on that. The $13 million that they have listed here on Hollywood Stock Exchange just seems outrageously, and doesn't make any sense to me. So two other movies open up on October 19th. The other is The Hate U Give. This is based on an adult novel by Angie Thomas. These movies, the young adult sort of world seems to have shifted over to like Netflix more than anything. I don't know if there's a huge audience for films based on these YA novels. That sort of whole period in film was more like The Hunger Games and Maze Runner, in like even like what was that, Fifth Wave? I don't know how this one's gonna do. Right now it's projected at $11 million to open. That seems somewhat high for a movie like this. It's coming out 20th Century Fox. You got a major studio. Production is Fox 2000 Pictures. It's going to premiere at the Toronto Film Festival here in September 7th. So in a couple of weeks. I think it really is going to depend on the quality. The plot, Star Carter is consistently switching between two worlds. The poor, mostly black neighborhood where she lives and the rich, mostly white prep school which she attends. The uneasy balance between these worlds is shattered when Star witnesses the failed shooting of her childhood best friend, Khalil, at the hands of a police officer. Now facing pressures from all sides of the community, Star must find her voice and stand up for what's right. Okay, so it's like very political, obviously. It's got some really strong messaging going on. Is that going to help it translate over to a mid-teens opening? Maybe. I just don't know. I don't know how popular the book is. I get the feeling that the young adult stuff is pretty played out, but it's also, this is a more political version of that. It's now listed at $10 million projected on Hollywood Stock Exchange. That seems about right, but I'm going to say more like $8 million opening. I think depending on the quality, it has a really strong chance to have a good multiplier, like 3 or 4x. So maybe 24, maybe low 30s total take domestically. I don't think it's going to have a huge success, but I think the political nature is going to help it a lot. Because if it was just another YA novel about coming of age, it's like, just put it on Netflix. That's what they do now. Because of the political message, it's coming out, right before the elections and here the midterm elections in 2018. I think it's going to help it. But I think projections are a little bit too high right now. I'm going to say $8 million for the opening. The last film opening up on the weekend of October 19th is Serenity, a neo-noir thriller film directed and written by Stephen Knight. Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, Diane Lane, Jason Clarke. Really good cast. Avion Pictures, that doesn't bode well. They're not a really great company. Stephen Knight, I do not know very well. He's British. What else did he do? The Girl in the Spider's Web. He wrote that. He wrote Allied. He wrote Burnt, who's a big screenwriter. He wrote and directed Locke. You probably remember that one. Hummingbird, I don't know, which was before that. So this one's kind of up in the air as well. projected to do $9 million. That seems way too high. This seems more like a $5 million open if it's lucky. Haven't heard much about it. Although he's a good screenwriter, director-wise, he doesn't really seem like he's a guy who can push out like a tier A, triple A movie. And the production company is not good, and they usually don't put out great products. So I think Serenity's not going to do all that well. Could be a very good movie, though. I don't think that's going to matter all that much. It's going to be a busy weekend with Halloween and The Hate U Give. So I think it's going to open, projected at 9, I think it's going to open actually around 5 or even less than that. So that is like the weekend of October 19th. Then the next weekend, which is usually pretty busy because it's the Halloween weekend, October 26th only has one movie coming out, Hunter Killer. This is from Summit Entertainment, starring Gerard Butler, Gary Oldman, Common's in it. This one, it's a sub-drama, kind of like a Hunt for Red October thing. Looks kind of low rent, to be honest with you. HSX has it opening at about 7 million. That actually seems kind of low to me. This seems more like 11, 12 opening, especially because it's all alone on that weekend. Usually this weekend we have like a Saw movie come out, a Paranormal Activity, or some Blumhouse horror film. It's just really odd that we got nothing. I guess they assume that Halloween's going to play very well through all the way through Halloween, so maybe they thought it would be pretty crowded. I don't know. Pretty weird. I'm going to say Hunter Killer. I'm going to say it opens at 12. Probably closes out at like 40 million, 35 to $40 million total. So that's the only film on October 26th. Then we jump into November. November 2nd, we have 3 sort of big movies. One really big movie opening up, Nutcracker and the Four Realms. Right now it's sitting at like a $35 million opening. This one is from Disney, starring Keira Knightley, Mackenzie Foy, who else? Helen Mirren, Morgan Freeman. I just saw the trailer for the first time for this movie. It looks okay. It looks kind of interesting. It didn't really strike me as like a triple A tier A movie. It seemed a little bit tier B, kind of mid shelf, definitely not their top shelf type movie. So I think it's going to do okay. 35 seems about right to me. I might, it's right after Halloween. We're starting in November, but it's early in November. That's always a really weird period, is you have all these Halloween horror films come out at the end of October and play really well through Halloween. Then all of a sudden it switches over to like almost the pre-holiday season, and it's kind of weird for the first week or two of November because people aren't sure. It's like, is this like still fall, or should we put out holiday movies? Like I remember like Bad Moms Christmas came out really early. Was that last year? And I was like, this feels too early for a Christmas movie. So it's like almost too early for that, but it's like you're too late to catch that fall horror spike that happens for Halloween. So I think Nutcracker, 35 seems about right to me. I'm going to go with that. Also opening on November 2nd will be Bohemian Rhapsody. This is the Queen biopic focusing on Freddie Mercury. Rami Malek is the lead. A lot of other people involved. Bryan Singer was the original director here, but because of some old sex scandals that he was involved with, he got taken off the picture for Dexter Fletcher. So a little bit of a production issue here. The previews and trailers have been very good. HSX is saying this thing opens in the high teens, maybe low 20s. That seems a little bit low to me. I think it's more like mid 20s, like 24 to 26. I'm just going to say it opens at 26. It seems like a movie that's going to play really well. I think it's going to connect with a lot of different groups of people, especially people over like 40, older folks. And then with younger people, I think the Mr. Robot himself being in it helps a lot. And the trailers have been really exciting. So I think it has enough energy to bring in a couple of different quads there. So I'm thinking about a $26 million opening. And if it does well, could even close out at like $100 million on 4x multiplier if it's really, really good. If it's kind of mediocre, probably looking at like 70 or something like that for its domestic take. Okay, so that is Bohemian Rhapsody. And then the final movie coming out from this weekend, November 2nd, is Nobody's Fool. This is a Tyler Perry movie, Tiffany Haddish, Amber Riley, Tika Sumpter. Should be pretty good. It's a very specific sort of targeted demographic play here. It's from Paramount Pictures, BET Films, Tyler Perry Studios. His movies tend to do pretty well. They don't usually have great multipliers or anything like that, but they tend to open decent. This one's looking like $11 million opening according to the HSX price. That seems right on target. I actually think it's going to be a little bit higher than that. I think it's probably going to be around the 13 range for Nobody's Fool. I mean, Tyler Perry just always gets people to come out. Multiplier is probably definitely going to be sub 3, I would say, unless it's really good. But I expect it to make like 30 million, maybe $35 million total domestic. Okay, so that's all for the weekend of November 2nd. And then there's a midweek opener on November 7th, The Front Runner. That's the Jason Reitman movie, biopic on the American Senator Gary Hart during his 1988 presidential campaign that he had to drop out of because he was caught in an affair. I mean, it's very strange to me. Hugh Jackman, J.K. Simmons, the usual Jason Reitman crew of people's in this. He has not had a hit in a long time. I also find it a little bit strange or kind of awkward that here's this dark comedy about Gary Hart, who all he did was have an affair. That was it. And that's so tame to what we're going through right now politically that it just seems like small potatoes. So unless the film's really good, it's going to have trouble breaking out. And Reitman hasn't had a hit in his last 3 movies. So I don't see this doing very well. HSX says about $6 million opening. That sounds about right. I'll say 7, maybe a little bit higher than that. Plus, people are kind of going to be like, it's right during the election. I guess it's probably open on election day. That's why they're doing that on the 7th of November there. So I don't know. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think Jason Reitman needs a little bit of a boost. I'll give him that. I think it opens at 7, maybe closes out like 30 as a really good multiplier. So that weekend of November 9th, Dr. Seuss comes out. This is the animated film version from Universal. I don't know much about this one. Benedict Cumberbatch does the voice of the Grinch. Have not seen the trailer yet. Music by Danny Elfman. I don't really have much to say about this one. Sorry about that. They're saying it's opening at 47. That seems really high to me. I can't remember the last Grinch movie that came out. Was it the Jim Carrey one? Like 15, 20 years ago? Maybe. I don't know what to say about this one. I think it's 47. It's going to open on IMAX. There hasn't been a ton. I mean, you have Nutcracker coming out before this. You have Goosebumps. That should play strong for a good month. So it might run into this a bit. 47 seems a little high. I would say more like 38-ish. I don't think the Grinch has that much of a pull with younger people these days. In my generation, it had a big pull. Benedict Cumberbatch being in there helps a lot, but I just don't see it breaking into the 40s like that. It will have a great multiplier. I'm probably at least 3.5x multiplier, maybe even 4, depending on the quality, of course. But I see it more as a high $38 million opening than a high 40 opening, as HSX is now projecting. So that's November 9th. We got a couple more movies on that. We have Overlord. Overlord is from Paramount and Bad Robot Productions. J.J. Abrams produced. The premise is, on the eve of D-Day during World War II, American paratroopers who are caught behind enemy lines after the plane crashes on a mission to destroy a German radio tower in a small town outside of Normandy. After reaching their target, the paratroopers come to realize that besides fighting off Nazi soldiers, they must also combat against horrifying, bloody, and violent creatures that are a result of a secret Nazi experiment. This one seems pretty interesting. I didn't know anything about it, and I saw the trailer. I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. And when you have Bad Robot involved and J.J. Abrams, you're in good hands. So this one is projected to open at about 14. That seems way too low to me. I'm thinking like low 20s, 23-ish this will open at. It is a little bit of a tough weekend with Dr. Seuss and some big movies coming out the weekend before. But it looks too cool and too interesting, and I think it's really going to play with that under 25 male demographic. So I think it's going to do okay and open up at about 23, maybe close out at like 70-ish, somewhere around there. Also opening on November 9th is The Girl in the Spider's Web. This is the continuation of the book series. It is, I guess, the film, a soft reboot with different actors, is a sequel to David Fincher's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The premise, a computer hacker, Lisbeth Salalander, I'm like butchering these names, and journalists, whatever, find themselves caught in a web of spies, cyber criminals, and corrupt government officials. So no Rooney Mara in this one, no David Fincher. Who's putting this one out? Sony's putting this one out. I think they did the first one. No Daniel Craig either. So, I don't know. Soft reboot. It's projected to do 14 is what HSX is doing. That seems pretty good. I think it might be a little bit higher than that because the book has such a built-in audience. I would say probably more like 17, 18. I'll go with $18 million on Girl in the Spider's Web. Should have a really strong multiplier too if the quality is good. I would say I don't know, 44, 54, somewhere in that range, somewhere in like the $50 million range total domestic. Not a huge film. But I think it will do okay, mostly because of the book audience, if they're still around and interested in seeing a sequel. So that wraps up November 9th. On to November 16th, 2 more weekends left. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. I wanted to do a complete preview here. I know it's going pretty long, but let's smash through these last 2 weekends. The sequel to The Fantastic Beasts is coming out. This is Warner Brothers, Eddie Redmayne, Catherine Waterston, who else? No Colin Farrell in this one? That sucks. Johnny Depp, Jude Law. Okay, got some good additions there. I've seen the trailer to this one. The original one was really tepid to me. Did not connect all that well. I think from the fantasy angle, it just seemed really muted. Cost $180 million. Worldwide box office was 814, so nothing to scoff at really there. I mean, I'm just doing like back of the napkin math. Total costs were probably $540 million. Total take probably was around $700 million, so a good $150 million profit, I think, maybe $200 million profit. So it was very profitable and really successful. Let's see what this one's projected at. Projected to open in about 80. I think that seems really accurate to me. $80 million opening weekend, at least a 3x multiplier, I would say. So you're putting it at like 240-ish. That seems fair. I just don't think the first one was all that good. So I see a little bit of a muted opening here. I'm going to say a $72 million opening, but probably a strong multiplier. So Fantastic Beasts, number 2. Also opening the weekend of November 16th is Widows. Steve McQueen, about a group of armed robbers who I think die in a failed heist, and then their wives, the widows, if you will, come in and take over. I guess they're like fighting like a cartel and the police and blah, blah, blah. Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, Colin Farrell's in this one though. Robert Duvall, Liam Neeson. I'm assuming that they die. Carrie Coon's also in it. Really interesting cast. Great trailers. Really kind of unique premise. You know, we always have these heist movies and crime films like Heat, and everything's a copy of Heat because Heat's brilliant. But this seems a little bit kind of an interesting take on it. I think because of the director, Steve McQueen, he's fantastic. I think it's going to do quite well. Projected at a $14 million opening, that seems way too low. I feel like there's something here with this one. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it opens low 30s. I don't know why I'm thinking this. It just feels something to write about it. It feels something like zeitgeisty for some reason. I'm gonna say 32 million. What's cool about it too is not to get into the demographic stuff and go on a rant, but like Ocean's 8, okay, great. Ghostbusters, female version of Ghostbusters. Ocean's 8, female versions of the Ocean's movies. Widows doesn't really just feel like a female copy of another movie. It feels like a really kind of doing its own thing. And I think people are really gonna like that a lot and go out and see it. So I'm gonna say low 30s on that opening up. Maybe hits $100 million domestically. Last movie for November 16th that weekend is Instant Family. Sean Anders, is that the guy from Workaholics? Is it? No, maybe. Oh, this is the guy that wrote Hot Tub Time Machine. So he's doing a new movie. I don't know anything about it. Rose Byrne's in it, so that's cool. Mark Wahlberg. I got no plot synopsis for you. I'm going on nothing. It's from Paramount. Tig Notaro's in it. Octavia Spencer is in it. It's a comedy film. That's all I got. That's all I got to go on right now. So what do we got it projected at? This is going to be a guess out of the blue. 13 million. That seems kind of high. Especially I think Widows is going to break out. Fantastic Beasts, and the weekend before is really busy. I see more like a $9 million opening for that one, but that one's totally a shot in the dark because I don't know that much about it. Okay, so that wraps up the weekend of November 16th. On to the final weekend of November 21st. First up is Ralph Breaks the Internet, 3D animation film from Walt Disney. It's a sequel to the 2012 film Wreck-It Ralph. John C. Reilly, Sarah Silverman do the voices of the main characters. Gal Gadot also. This one is looking like projected to do $64 million opening weekend. That seems really high to me. I don't really know that much about the original. I never saw it. That did $471 million total. So I guess maybe I could see it open at 64. That seems way too high to me, just to be totally frank. I feel like this is more like a low 40s, maybe 41. I almost like high 30s. I mean, the thing is, you got Fantastic Beasts open up the week before. You got Dr. Seuss, and you got the Nutcracker all lined up before this movie comes out. So it's getting like fourth shot at these audiences. So I don't know. I'm gonna go on a limb and say like $35 million. I think these people are out of their minds. It's gonna open at 64. But again, I'm not an expert on like computer animation and children's films. So I'm gonna say 35 on that one. Stick with it. Really good multiplier. At least cracks over, I think, easily $120 million domestically. Creed 2 also opens up November 21st. This one is looking like a 29 high 20s opening is the current sort of consensus on this one. This one's coming out from Annapurna and Warner Brothers. I guess Annapurna is doing the international. They're very new, and Warner Brothers is doing domestic. Michael B. Jordan, Sylvester Stallone, Tessa Thompson, Dolph Lundgren, really strong cast. Is this the same director as the first one? No, different director now. And this director, Stephen Capel, doesn't really have a ton of experience from what I can see here. Looks like some TV, but this is his first really big film, it looks like. I don't know. I thought it was a surefire $30-40 million opening, but it might get, the cast alone might push it into that $30-40 million range. But the fact unproven director, and the quality might suffer because of that. That's really going to be key, I think, because we're getting a really busy season. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and say like $32 million opening for that one. And then a really strong multiplier, like the first one, I think had a great multiplier. So I would say $100 million minimum for that. Unless there's big quality issues, and then it could really tank. Robin Hood. What? There's another Robin Hood movie? God. Summit Entertainment. Who, I don't know, Jamie Foxx, Ben Mendelsohn, Taron Egerton, I guess. Is he the lead in this? Is he Robin Hood? I don't know anything about this movie. I saw the trailer. I was like, look, I feel like since I've been a child, like when I was younger, the big movie was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I saw it like 10 times in the movie theater. I was probably 11 when it came out. Ever since then, I feel like they've tried to do Robin Hood. There was that awful reboot with Russell Crowe. Did anybody see that movie? Has anybody wanted a Robin Hood movie since Prince of Thieves? I mean, Prince of Thieves is just so iconic. It was just it wasn't like a great high art film. It was just a great, fun blockbuster movie. And everybody was really hamming it up in it. And I think people look back on that movie pretty fondly. So I don't know why we're doing another reboot here. It's a tired story. We've heard it 1,000 times. I don't think this is going to do anything. Projected at 14. That sounds about right. I'm going to say probably about $16 million just because it is such a popular legend. And the cast looks decent. But I don't think it's going to do anything more than 16. I don't think it's going to break into the 20s or anything like that. Also opening on the 21st, got 2 movies left. Green Book, directed by Peter Farrelly, Viggo Mortensen, Marsala Ali, Linda Cardellini, I think is her name. She's from Freaks and Geeks. Her. This actually looks really good. The trailers have been fantastic. It's about a bouncer at a New York nightclub. Viggo takes a job as a pianist chauffeur during a tour in the Deep South. The pianist is Ali, so it looks like a really fascinating play on race relations back in the 1960s in the Deep South. The trailers are great. It looks like they did a really good job. This is Universal Pictures. I expect this one to kind of have maybe like a Hidden Figures run, probably not as amazing as that, but I see it opening at like 14. It's projected at like 9-ish. I see it opening maybe in the mid-teens, but having a 4 or 5x multiplier because it looks really good. I trust those actors. The story looks fascinating, and I think it's very timely to right now. So I think it's going to have a great leggy run to it, but might open a little bit low in the 14s, but I think it's going to do fantastic and push past 50, 60, 70, maybe even higher than that. A lot of awards, I think, contention for Green Book. Last but not least is Second Act, Peter Segal film. Jennifer Lopez plays the lead. Stuck in a low-paying job, a woman gets a chance to fulfill her career ambitions when a private finance firm is misled into believing that she's an accomplished consultant and hire her to handle a major business deal. This sounds stupid. This sounds like a movie that was made in 1994. It sounds totally throwaway. I don't know what they're thinking doing this. What company's putting this out? This is absurd. SDX film. What is with SDX films and like scooping stuff out of the gutter? Like, I just don't get it. Their quality needs to get so much better if they want to compete with bigger studios. It's just, I don't know. As someone who not even involved in the business, it's just frustrating to watch SDX just sort of like flop around, putting out really bad movies. This is not, no one's going to see this. This is a movie that should have come out in like 2002 at the latest. It seems like a movie should be like 1994. Scheduled for 8 million or projected at 8 million. I think it's more like and that's probably about what it'll do. I would say more like a $9 million movie. Everybody loves Jennifer Lopez. Who doesn't like her? Okay, so that wraps up all of the weekends. Just like a quick recap of the bigger films that I'm seeing for the fall. And these are my reads on it, based on the HSX sort of projections here. I think Fantastic Beasts is going to open pretty big at 72-ish in the 70s. I think Nun's going to be great in September. I see it opening way over current projections. I see it opening up at about 45. Venom, I feel like, is super hard to read, but I think it's going to do okay. I don't see it doing like normal comic book movie numbers, which is like way over 50, closer to 100 million. Or even over 100 million for MCU movies. I feel like Venom's going to open similar to The Nun in about the mid 40s. Dr. Seuss, I see it opening below like the high 40s. I think it's more like a high 30s movie. First Man, I think, is going to overperform pretty significantly. Not so much on the opening weekend, but I think on the second, third, and on weekends are going to do quite well. It's going to have a nice leggy run. Nutcracker, I think, is going to open about 35. I think Ralph Breaks the Internet, even though I don't know much about that series or that film, I don't see it opening in the $65 million range, which currently HSX has it listed as. I see it more as a 35. And I think my big breakout movie, outside of The Nun, I think the big breakout movie I see happening is Widows. It's listed at $14 million opening. I think it opens around 30, double that. I have 32 down. I think it has a great run. I think that's going to be the big surprise of the fall. Anyways, guys, that's my fall movie preview. Thanks for listening. I know it was a long show, but I definitely wanted to get through all the bigger movies that are coming out over the next 3 months. I will be back this weekend with a weekend review. Thanks for listening, guys. This has been the Wildline Podcast.